Good morning, KHF.
Morning, Belle Dandy. Huh?
What is up, Belle Dandy?
I don't know. Why did I just say that? I'm sorry, I meant good morning, Wren. That was weird. That's right, I called her Belle Dandy once. But why? I shouldn't have even known that name back then. And why is it whenever I think about Belle Dandy I feel so sad?
Hey Kay, snap out of it!
What? Oh, right. So, I finally finished the first season of Slayers. Now, before we get into anything, I want to clear up a misconception that a lot of people seem to have for some reason. People seem to be under the impression that I'll watch all of a series' subsequent seasons immediately after finishing the first. Not once did I ever say I'll do that. Very, very rarely do I actually watch the subsequent series immediately after finishing the first one, even if I enjoyed the first season. Still to this day there are series that I liked, but I haven't watched their second or third season or their movie adaptations or anything like that. Thing is, I've got such a long list of anime to watch, and I need to get through it if I'm going to get my memory back. I've got such a long list and just not enough time to be able to watch all the seasons in a certain franchise. Now that's not to say I'll never watch the subsequent seasons, it will just take me a while to get around to them, that's all. I'm really sorry if this disappoints you, but it's just too long of a list and too little time. Oh, and I'm not angry at people for having this misconception, I'm really not. I just wanted to clear things up where people have been mistaken, that's all. Alright, now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, back onto Slayers. So, in the end, I really enjoyed this series. I can see why this series was so popular when it came out. It's a very well done series. Some minor flaws aside, but they're mainly to do with the time that it came out. There are some artwork and animation goofs, but hey, it was 1995 when this series came out, so they're really forgivable. It's really amusing watching this series in the modern day and just realising how much has changed in anime. This was back when female characters actually dressed appropriately in fantasy anime. These days when it comes to fantasy anime, it seems all the creators think of is, how many busty women can we put in thongs? Ha 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 ha. It just gets really stupid. Like I said from the beginning, a lot of modern series could learn a lot from this one. The story is very enjoyable, with only a little bit of filler here and there. The characters were mostly very likeable, and there were some really good comedy moments in there, a lot of it that properly made me laugh.
While I was trying to study.
Overall, despite some minor flaws, it's very clear to see why this series is considered an all-time classic. If I had to criticise it, I'd say it gets off to a little bit of a slow start, but it quickly picks up. I also felt that the ending was a little bit lackluster, but that's most likely because they were leading into the next season. But those are my only real complaints about the plot, and they're only very small things. Everything else will keep you very thoroughly entertained. Here's an interesting bit of trivia. This series was actually directed by the same guy who would go on to direct Shakugan no Shana, Takashi Watanabe. And I really hope I said that name right. The guy knows how to direct, I'll give him that. Well, what else can I say that I haven't already said? This series is a lot of fun and I do highly recommend watching it. I could comment on things like artwork and animation flaws, but that would just be nitpicking, and again, this was 1995. If I'm gonna fault this series for things like animation loops and stuff, I might as well fault every single animation series that came out in 1995. The only real major goof that stood out to me was during a fight between Gowry and Zangulos where they forgot to colour in their legs, but I actually thought that was funny. Actually, I do have one question about the plot though. What was the deal with that dagger right at the beginning of the series? You know, the one that turns people evil. I don't think it's ever established just what the deal with that thing is, and after the first few episodes it's never brought up again. Is it something that's going to be resolved in a later season or something? Just what's the deal there? Well, I suppose I should move on to talking about the characters. Let's start with the leading lady herself, Lena Inverse.
Now that you've cut your hair, you don't really look like her anymore.
Well, that is the best news I've heard all day.
Though, you are very similar to her.
Anyway, Lena was absolutely awesome. She's just a very great and lovable character. You'll find it very hard to not like her when you watch this series. She's just simply amazing. She's a complete and total badass that doesn't take crap from anybody. You give her trouble and boom! Dragon Slave to the face! With the power she has at her disposal, I think she can give even the strongest anime characters a run for their money. Hey, it's true what they say. Good things do come in small packages. Though, it is gross how her powers don't work properly when she's on her period. Yeah, that's just... yeah. It's true. It's established early on that her powers don't work properly during that time of the month. Gross.
Ugh, men.
But overall, Lena is just a great protagonist and is certainly no pushover. You'll find yourself absolutely loving her when you watch this series. On to the other main character, Gowry. Alright, Gowry was a complete and total moron. His stupidity, it's completely beyond belief. I've seen dumb blondes before, but darn. This guy makes Shiro Emiya look like a complete genius. That being said though, while he is a complete idiot, he is a really good person and it's hard not to love him. He might be a moron, but he has a good sense of honour and chivalry. Well, most of the time at least. Despite his lack of brain power though, he is a really skilled swordsman. It's about one of the only things he can do right. Yeah, he's an idiot, but he's got a heart of solid gold. Gowry will always have your back, even if he doesn't get what's going on more than half the time.
I notice Gowry also shares your inability to say certain people's names correctly.
One character I found myself having real difficulty warming up to was Amelia. Though, I know I'm going to have to tread lightly here, especially considering I haven't seen the other seasons yet. But look, in this season at least, I found her to be, well, quite frustrating. Her constant ramblings about being a hero of justice got old really quickly. I'd like to know just what it was that brought up this obsession with justice within her. Though I'm sure that's something that's going to be discussed in later seasons. Though I do understand that the purpose of her character is to be a parody of those over-the-top "for great justice" character archetypes. So in that regard, I can't stay too mad at Amelia. But in contrast to the other characters in the series, it just comes off as annoying. Because of this about her character though, this leads to her having a very cliché view of what it means to be a hero of justice. But I guess that's the point. Listen kid, being a hero isn't about flashy entrances or giving huge speeches to a wrongdoer about how you're going to bring down punishment upon them. It's about doing what you know in your heart to be right, and always being there to carry it out. That's what you taught me, right?
What's he talking about? What is that thing?
Just give him a minute, Emma. And let me tell you something else, Amelia. Sometimes justice comes with a great price. I learned that the hard way.
What do you mean?
Just leave him, Emma.
Yeah, but what is that thing?
It's the thing that KHF treasures more than anything else. It's very important to him.
The thing he treasures more than anything? K.
So yeah, I didn't find myself warming up to Amelia all that much, but that's probably down to personal reasons. And who knows, maybe my view on her will change when I get to the later seasons. The kid's got a lot to learn about what hero and justice really mean. Her father, though, is simply awesome. It takes some serious stones to try and reason with evil ghosts. As for Zelgoddess, well, I really didn't think all that much of him because he was only really involved right at the beginning and then again right near the end. He's just a sorcerer with a chip on his shoulder. Not really much else to him besides that. Though it did make me laugh when he pulls off a fighter Doken with Lena. But Zelgoddess is a good enough guy, and a likeable character I guess. I did feel sorry for him because of his affliction, and he's in my good books for telling Amelia to shut up in one episode. Just for doing that, you are my broski, Zel. I know that a lot of you will want to know my thoughts on Selfiel, but really there's not much I can say on her. She doesn't come into the series till near the end, and really, when she does, she doesn't do all that much until right at the very end. The only real thing to her character is her crush on Gowry. That's it, really. But while there isn't all that much I can say on her now, I will have a lot to say later on. Just wait. The only other character worth mentioning is Rezo. And I thought that Rezo was, well, honestly, a bit boring. I mean, his motives for being a villain are quite weak, and overall he's just not that interesting as a character. His henchmen were actually more interesting than he was. He himself was, well, actually a very dull excuse for an antagonist. Although, considering Lena was loud and interesting, maybe it was appropriate. Even his #1 follower, Eris, was more interesting and had a better backstory. Eris? Eris was helping him? No, Cloud, just no. Look, she existed long before you and Eris did. But back to Rezo himself. He could have been an interesting character, but instead he just comes off as very bland and uninteresting. What makes up for this is the fact that his henchmen were so memorable and interesting. And when are people gonna learn? You can't kill wizards. They always come back as a different colour. You guys thought you finished him off, but he just came back as Rezo the White. But that's about all I can say for the cast. Now, on to the dubbing. This is actually very difficult for me to comment on. Alright, I suppose I can summarise it like this. When this dub is good, it's very good. But when it's bad, it's just terrible. What I mean by this is, some of the dub's voice actors give absolutely great performances, but some of them cannot act to save their lives. The best example of this is with Sophia. Her voice actor cannot act. She gives a horrible performance and Sophia just sounds bored all of the time. It's basically the reverse of what happened with Lord Oompa Loompa in Excel Saga, where there were moments where his voice got very emotional but his face was just deadpan. There were moments where Sophia's face gets really emotional but she just sounds so monotone. It's seriously like this. Oh Gowrie dear, please do help me, I'm in trouble. Oh Miss Lena, do watch out and be careful. Who actually listened to this woman and thought she was doing a good job? Stacia Crawford, your acting's bad and you should feel bad. However, like I said, the people that can act give really great performances in this dub. While I really don't care for Lisa Ortiz and her squeaky voice, I think she did really great as Lena Inverse. I did comment that Eric Stewart gets off to a really rocky start with Gowrie, but he does really improve as the series goes on and he gets more comfortable with the role. While Zelgadis' first voice actor really couldn't act to save his life, Crispin Freeman then takes over the role later on when Zelgadis comes back into the series, and he is an absolute godsend compared to the first voice actor. Though his voice is so vastly different, I'm surprised they didn't add in a line saying, "Hey, Zell, why does your voice sound different?" This series was unfortunately dubbed during a time that a lot of people refer to as the dark age of dubbing, where English dubs of anime were nowhere near the standard that they are today, and more often than not you would see a series censored during this time. When I was going into this series, I was seriously very concerned that the English dub was going to be censored, considering it was done during the dark age of dubbing, but I was very glad to see it wasn't, or at least not as far as I could see. The characters do still bleed and talk about death, and on several occasions Gowrie actually says the word damn, and heck he even says bastard towards the end, and all the jokes about breasts are still in there. Considering all that was going on with anime dubbing at the time, I'm very glad that this series wasn't censored. All things considered, I actually think this dub is a hidden gem during the dark age of dubbing, and I think it's pretty decent, but honestly, if people say they don't like this English dub, I can actually understand. But anyway, overall, Slayers is a very enjoyable series and I do highly recommend checking it out. It's very clear to see why this series is an all-time classic and it's just a lot of fun to watch.
Maybe I should ask Lena to teach me the Dragon Slave, so I finally have a way to shut you up.
Oh, you shut up, Emma! But those are my only real complaints about the plot, and they're really only very small things. Everything else will keep you there. The only real major goof that stood out to me was during a fight between... Well, I suppose I should move on to talking about the characters. Well, what threw me off there was my hand didn't connect in the way I wanted it to. She's a complete and total badass that doesn't take any crap from anybody. You'll find it very hard to not like her when you watch this series. She's just simply amazing. She doesn't... But overall, Lena is just a great protagonist. She's a protagonist. But overall, Lena is just a great protagonist, and I forget what the rest of the sentence is. And who knows, maybe my view on her will change. You were helping Rezo?